This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, an online learning community. Do you ever worry if you're doing research and prospect management correctly? At the Institute, we turn researchers into fundraising intelligence assets, leading your development officers to the biggest and best donor prospects, and bringing your organization major gift success.
We're really working on the next evolution of relationship mapping. First, it means an expanded definition of what a connection between two people can be. Not just they sat on the same board, same massive organization 3 years ago. That's helpful, but not everything. It's things like, do their kids go to the same school? Are they neighbors in Aspen with their vacation homes? Have they been spotted in galas or, in photos at events together? Like things like that that are really hard to piece together, we're going to be able to do because we pull information from the entire internet. And again, not just a limited set of sources. Expanding what is a connection between two people.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Will Schrepferman, CEO and co-founder at DonorAtlas. Hello, Will. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Hey, Jen. Thanks for having me.
I can't wait to hear about your vision for DonorAtlas, especially in prospect research. But first, I'm hoping you're willing to share what led you to found a company in the nonprofit sector, because most times people are going after the for-profit and then they kind of make their way down to the nonprofits later.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my backstory might paint the picture a little more. I'm sure I shared this with you when we first met, and if you've ever been on a call with me, I've probably shared this fact with you. So my fun fact is I raised my first dollar when I was 13 years old, and so I'm 24 years old now, so I can say I've been in fundraising for more than a decade, technically. But I grew up around philanthropy, around fundraising, around mission-driven organizations. And then by the time I got to college, went to Harvard, I studied data science, and I actually took time off in the middle of my education to work on a different startup that primarily served mission-driven organizations. And so I've just been around this my entire life, and I've really honestly never known anything else. Spent a lot of time, again, around fundraising, around donor research, around the frustration, the manual processes, and that's why I started DonorAtlas, is because I'd been living this problem of donor research for years, honestly.
That's really interesting. And I'm glad that you're focused not just on nonprofits and systems and things, but specifically on fundraising. I'm wondering if you can tell us, of course, curious minds want to know, what is DonorAtlas? What does it do? Why should we care?
So the one sentence version, DonorAtlas is the first prospect research tool that's been built from the ground up with AI. So if you're listening to this and you haven't heard of a prospect research tool before, what that means, donor research is essential to fundraising because fundraising is ultimately about people. It's about understanding who they are, what they care about, why they give. And all of those things take hours and hours to research and put together. And so what a tool like DonorAtlas does is makes that research easy, automates it, puts it all in one place. And if you're listening to this and you have used a donor research tool before, I would think of DonorAtlas as the 2025 version of those tools that were built mostly in 2005. And I mean that with no disrespect. These tools have paved the way for the industry, and we're definitely standing on top of their groundwork, but there's a lot you can do with AI and the technology and data available in 2025 that you couldn't decades ago. Specifically, there's three things we really focus on. First is where we pull donor research data from, which is the entire internet. Everything that is public, anything you could feasibly find out there in the world. Number two, that means when you're interacting with DonorAtlas and you're looking at a donor profile, everything has a citation, everything's going to have a fact behind it, everything's going to have an explanation. There's no black box nature of the data. The third thing, and if you're somebody that's interacted with systems like this before, you'll probably appreciate this, but I think it goes without saying, it's important for this data to stay up to date and be dynamic and not just be static records that sit in a database for a year or two and nobody ever looks at. Because we pull our data in this dynamic AI-driven way, we can keep it really up to date. We can fix it when people tell us things are wrong with it and just be a lot more flexible and up to date with the way we manage the data. So all this in service of saving folks time and helping them raise more money. Yeah, that's DonorAtlas in a nutshell.
Yes, you mentioned the citations, and of course we hear AI all the time. AI this, AI that, and you're talking about primarily generative AI, right? So that's going and finding information, pulling it together and matching it with algorithms, if I'm getting that correct.
Yeah, the way we use AI is manyfold. You might be familiar with ChatGPT, where you might want to log on and say, hey, write me a first draft of this grant proposal. We don't really use generative AI in the sense that we're writing content for you, writing outreach to donors, doing anything like that. We're using it to automate very specific parts of the donor research process. For example, I have 8 websites that could be about, Will Schrepferman. I have a pretty uncommon name, so they're probably all about me accurately, but you might have to look at those websites and figure out, hey, is this the Will that went to Harvard? Is this the Will that's a dashing Hollywood actor? Something like that. And so using AI to make some of those judgments is one piece. The other big piece is when you're summarizing information. There's a lot of information out there when you're thinking about, especially a very philanthropic person, how many gifts they've given and who they are and all their interests and many things like that. You don't want to make a 100-page dossier of every piece of information. You want to summarize it and categorize it and classify it in ways that are intelligible and interesting. And then finally, there's how you interact with data. DonorAtlas works a lot like Google, where rather than having to type in names or put in filters or do a lot of manual, work to try to search for data, you can literally type into a search bar and say, show me the donors in New York City who went to Harvard and care about data science education or something like that. And, be very, very flexible with how you actually interact with the data too. It's not as if there's just one AI happening. It's multiple things and improving the process of donor research in every way we can, where AI is applicable and trustworthy at the end of the day. You can't just let these systems run wild. You have to build very careful guardrails around how they get used and in what specific setting.
Yeah, it's interesting that we have all these tools now. There are so many different like ChatGPT and Claude and all these other tools. And one of the things that I've held back on is trying to become the software engineer. I could spend my time, and when Google came out, I did spend time becoming a power user of that tool. And I use these tools for various things. But what I really like about DonorAtlas in terms of summary is that it is a nicely written summary. And this is something that often falls outside of our process as researchers at Aspire, because we're not going to take the time to write that summary when we're looking for specific early information, like during verification or early cultivation. And that's been a whole new way of thinking about some of our work for us. One of the other things that you have on DonorAtlas is a net worth number. Tell me about that, because that sounds like black box to me. We've typically gotten black box numbers from places. How does that work?
Yeah, I'll come out and say it's not easy, right? It's not as if this is hand wavy and there's just going to be a number. We always provide a range specifically with net worth. We think about it in a holistic way. It's not just the property you own or the stocks you might hold or anything like hard assets like that. It's everything about you. Is your last name Rockefeller? Are you on the board of a family foundation where you have the last name with everybody else in that family foundation and there's $50 million in assets in that foundation? Are you a young startup CEO? There's a lot of context that goes into net worth. And so when we're making a net worth estimate in range, first and foremost, it's just that it's an estimate. We're not actually providing the ground truth. We're providing a best estimate on everything we know from those assets to that kind of holistic measurement from literally anything you could feasibly research or know about a person. And again, the final step is then just putting it all in context. But that's how we think about net worth.
Do you give an explanation of where this is coming from? Okay.
Correct.
Right.
And that's everything in the platform. There's never going to be a number without an explanation behind it. It's never just going to say $10 million. It's going to say 10 to 15. And then it's going to say, oh, has a family foundation, late stage in career, has $4 million home, has $2 million Aspen condo, or, it'll list all the bullet points and explanations behind a given factor figure.
And those are all clickable because they're cited,
Exactly.
which is really cool. Can't tell you how much I love that. That's so important to us.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We hear that a lot.
So another area I'm hoping you would cover for us is how you view your tool in context of the maturity of an organization. Many nonprofits can raise just millions and millions. It's kind of amazing. If they're really good at relationships, if they honor their donors, whether those are individuals, companies, foundations, or a mix, they will raise a lot of money. They provide good programs. And prospect research often, my kind of prospect research, hiring a person, often doesn't come until they're really pushing into major gifts. maybe hiring major gift officers. So that's kind of where I know I fit with major gift prospect research. But how does your tool work with organizations, or what have you imagined it would do?
Yeah. So, we've worked with hundreds of partners and clients. We only launched about a year and a half ago. I feel like I didn't note that in my intro, which might be important that we haven't been around that long, but we've been around long enough to really get a wide exposure to mature, multi-$100 million organizations, all the way to organizations where it's just an executive director, everything from arts and culture to human services to advocacy organizations, universities, hospitals. So we've really seen at this point the full kind of gamut that organizations are. And I'd say when we think about who our ideal user is, it's less drawing a line around a certain revenue number or a certain head count or something like that. It's really like, are they feeling the pain that manual research is the bottleneck? That could look like a couple of different things. It could be they have only one prospect researcher on staff and they literally can't get enough profiles done in a day. It could be that frontline fundraisers are going into conversations like blind and a little bit unarmed to make the most of them. So it could look different things for different organizations, but I'd say when you're feeling that pain of I cannot do enough research and you feel like you're being a reactive rather than proactive fundraising team, that's where we're going to be able to give you the speed of execution to do your research. We're going to be able to give you the confidence in it, and that's where we're going to be useful.
Well, it makes sense in the trajectory of our tools. So it used to be when I started that pretty much it was up to a human being to pull any information at all. And Google had just come on to the scene, which was a huge change from some of the antiquated other tools we may have had. Online was still new when I started in the 90s, early 2000s. And I recall when some of the new tools started to make it so that we didn't have to do that initial work anymore, that we could hand that over. And what a game changer that was. I guess it could be scary for some, but really it changed the way we could do our work. It made our work better. We were able to support development officers better. And I kind of see this as that next step as well. So organizations that couldn't hire a full-time person or are in that middle space, especially where they're going into a meeting, they have the relationship, they're going to ask for the gift, and they ask for what they think is a big number and they get an immediate yes. And they're like, oh, I just missed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
They can go back, but this could help make that so that they have something they can use to at least prepare for a meeting, which is
100%.
super helpful.
I think it's important to emphasize too, like I said at the beginning, fundraising is about people. It's an essentially human task. And so we're never going to automate the entirety of fundraising. It's just focusing on the parts that AI and machines and algorithms are really good at, the pulling of information, the reading, the summarization, all of those things. But we're never taking the human out of fundraising or even the research there has to be that human in the loop that has context and judgment and relationships and all the things that are really valuable that technology will never replace.
For sure. So I was so happy that I could visit your offices when I was in New York City, and you shared some upcoming improvements or new features to DonorAtlas, and they're probably going to be live by the time this publishes. Did you want to share what some of that new stuff is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Our day-to-day is really focused on making sure the data is accurate, always improving that, of course, supporting hundreds of customers we have. One of the bigger picture things we're working on over the next couple months, though, is relationship mapping. When you're researching a donor, one of the most important things is who do they know that I know? What is my kind of warm introduction path or something like that is how folks think of it. And we do that today. We have embedded relationship mapping in our profiles. So when you look at somebody, and you do have a connection to that person. Like for me, for example, if they were a Harvard alum, or if I was fundraising for an organization and one of our board members knew that person because they were on the same board, for example, that'll show up on a profile. And that's great. It's helpful. It saves a lot of time. But we're really working on the next evolution of relationship mapping, which means three things to us. First, it means an expanded definition of what a connection between two people can be, not just they sat on the same board, same massive organization 3 years ago. That's helpful, but not everything. It's things like, do their kids go to the same school? Are they neighbors in Aspen with their vacation homes? Have they been spotted in galas, or, in photos at events together? Like things like that are really hard to piece together. We're going to be able to do because we pull information from the entire internet. And again, not just a limited set of sources. Expanding what is a connection between two people, working on that. Two, being able to use your board, your network, the people that do the introducing for you. We want you to be able to start from there and identify, hey, Jen's on my board. Who are the 15 people she's closest to that have given to climate organizations before or something like that? Making that extremely easy is going to make a major unlock for the organizations we work with. And then third, we want them to be actionable. If we're going to give you these recommendations and insights and things like that, it's not enough that we just dump data on you like everything we do. It needs to be explainable, and it needs to be something you can actually take action on and not just a dump of 50 bullet points of information that you can never use. That's what we're focusing on. And I do hope to any future listeners that it'll be done by January. I'm pretty sure that those three things will be done, and reach out to me and I'll tell you what we're working on next, because I'm sure it'll be something new and exciting.
That's great. I'm sure it will take some iterations, because once you get people in there poking holes, you need to get that feedback to really know what's happening in real life.
Oh, those are my favorite kind of calls, when I'm on and people are poking holes. That makes us better at the end of the day.
And it's funny you said the gala pictures, because if anyone has ever worked for an arts organization, oh my goodness, like sometimes that's all you have is recognizing that these two people, these two names, and you're doing these event bios that, oh, wait, they keep showing up together in a gala. Oh, they're partners. And I wouldn't have had other information. I find those arts folks to be pretty tricky. They're all over Instagram and everything, but they're not in sort of the public databases necessarily that we're
Not on
used
LinkedIn.
to. No, they're not on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, I'm always happy to have a conversation. I'm also very easy to reach. If you have any questions, thoughts, like want to talk about anything we covered, I'm just will@DonorAtlas.com. I'm around.
We will definitely include your contact info in the show notes.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. That was Will Schrepferman, CEO and co-founder at DonorAtlas. How fun is it to hear about some of the newest technology in the market and to know that the nonprofit sector is attracting this kind of talent right out of the gate? I hope you're now duly curious about what a tool like DonorAtlas looks like in real life and how it might make your work faster or even change your work for the better. If you missed the somewhat daring Prospect Research Institute webinar with DonorAtlas in December, you get another crack at it with CARA, the California Advancement Researchers Association, on February 11 at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and 1 p.m. Eastern Time. This time we plan to focus on family foundations instead of individuals. Check the show notes for details and contact information for Will and DonorAtlas. Wishing you another great day in the research life. Hey there! Do you manage a prospect research team, or were you newly hired as a prospect researcher? Then you'll be delighted to hear about the Institute's Career Agent Track. In this bundle of 4 courses, participants learn how to build great profiles, calculate capacity ratings, the basics of prospect identification and prospect management, ethics, and the fundamentals of analytics every team member needs to be skilled in. If you need to build the research skills of a fundraising intelligence asset like this, sign up today at member.prospectresearchinstitute.org/career agent.